By the time the wagon pitched into the yard, the man in the back was gray to the lips, and the snake under the driver's seat had been rattling so long the horses were trembling from it. Nobody moved first. Not the ranch hands. Not the ranch owner standing on the porch with his young daughter pressed to his side. The only person who set down what she was doing was the big woman skinning potatoes by the kitchen steps. Mara Quill wiped her hands on her apron and said, "Don't any of you jump." Dust hung in the noon heat like sifted flour. One of the hands was praying under his breath. The bitten rider, a vaquero named Tomas, had a strip of harness leather knotted above his boot, so tight the flesh above it bulged red and angry. The rattling came again, hidden and furious. Mara took a forked mesquite pole from beside the woodpile, walked to the wagon, and crouched. Easy now. The snake shot out from beneath the seat in a blur of diamond pattern and white mouth. Two men yelped and stumbled backward. Mara pinned it clean behind the head, caught it with her other hand, and dropped the thick western diamond back into an empty feed barrel before the horses had finished shying. The yard went silent except for the drum of the Rattler striking wood. Before we go any further, settle in wherever you are tonight and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. We always like knowing who's riding with us when the road gets long. Then Mara climbed into the wagon beside Tomas. She sliced the leather tie, cut away his boot, and looked once at the punctures above the ankle. "How long?" "Near an hour," the driver said. "Too long," muttered a ranch hand. Deke Talver gave a little laugh from the shade of the porch rail. He was the ranch owner's nephew, all polished boots and easy contempt. What's too long is waiting while the cook plays doctor. Mara never looked up. "Bring my black satchel." Deke smiled wider. "Hear that? She's got a satchel. Next she'll be wanting an office." That was when Owen Vale came down the porch steps. He moved like a man whose strength had not left him, only gone quiet from grief. "Fetch the satchel," he said. Deke turned. "Uncle, you can't be serious." "I can." No one liked the flatness in Owen's voice when he meant to be obeyed. The boy ran. Mara pressed two fingers to Tomas's throat, counted under her breath, and listened to his breathing. When the satchel came, she mixed a powder into a swallow of rye, forced it between his teeth, and had two men carry him into the shade of the bunkhouse porch. "Will he live?" Owen asked. Mara glanced toward the south pasture, where the grass shimmered pale under the heat. If the dose was light, if his lungs hold, if he isn't bitten again, that changed the feel of the whole place. Again, Owen's daughter Ivy tightened her grip on his hand. "Are there more?" she asked. "Yes," Mara said. "Near the house. If we've been careless." Deke pushed off the porch rail. "We burn the lower grass. Smoke them out. Men have handled snakes since before this woman learned to boil beans. Burn dry pasture in this wind," Mara said, "and you'll drive every rattler on the mesa into the barns, cellars, hayloft, and bedrooms." One of the older hands, eyes fixed on the barrel, said, "She ain't wrong." Deke reddened. "Since when does Kitchen help give orders on this ranch?" Mara stood then. She was broad-shouldered, plain-faced, rough-knuckled, and calm. Men noticed her the way they noticed a gatepost until the day they leaned too hard on it. Owen looked directly at her. "What do you know?" "Enough to tell you snakes do not crowd men and cattle like this for no reason. Enough to know something has pushed them close. Can you stop it?" She heard the other question under that one. "Can you stop this before I lose anything else that breathes under my roof?" "I can try. But if I do, no one reaches blind into troughs, hay, boots, or under steps. Nobody rides alone. Nobody burns a thing until I say why the snakes are here." Deke barked a laugh. "Hear that? She wants to run the place." Owen never took his eyes off Mara. "Then run it." By evening, she had found 9 more rattlers. 1 under the wash basin, 2 by the smithy, 1 under the school mare's belly, 3 near the lower gate, 1 in the chicken shed, 1 under the bunkhouse porch. Snakes were not wicked. A rattler wanted warmth, mice, and warning enough to be left alone. When they left good denning ground and drifted into open work yards, some pressure had made the choice for them. At dusk, she walked the south line with Owen beside her. The grass smelled baked and bitter. Beyond it, the low hills lay blue in the falling light. He carried a rifle. She carried her forked pole and a sack. "You never told me what you were before you came here," he said. "You never asked. I figured a person had a right to keep some things closed. That's why I stayed." That almost brought a smile to his face. After a few steps, he said, Ivy thinks you aren't afraid of much. Mara brushed a dry seed head with her fingertips. Fear's only knowledge arriving fast. Who taught you that? My Uncle Silas. Trapper. Snake collector. Sold venom to doctors. He used to say there's no bravery in not feeling fear. The trick is making it useful. She stopped at a wash cut and crouched. Half hidden under scrub lay a neat scatter of yellow grain. Not spilled. Placed. She rubbed a kernel between her fingers. Feed, Owen said. Yes. No wagon comes this way. No. Then someone put it here. A breeze moved through the grass and carried a faint mouse smell up from the hollow. Mara's skin tightened. Feed draws mice. Mice draw snakes. Owen's voice dropped. You think this was done? Before she could answer, a rifle cracked from the ridge. Dirt burst against Owen's boot. He shoved Mara down into the wash just as a second shot tore through the grass above them. The smell of hot metal and crushed sage filled the air. His hand braced against the back of her shoulder, solid and quick and without panic. Show yourself, he shouted. Only the cattle answered, milling farther off in the dusk. Mara lifted her head a little. That wasn't meant to kill. No, he said, face gone hard. It was meant to warn. That night, Tomas lived. He slept in the bunkhouse with lanterns at either end of his bed and Mara checking his pulse through the dark hours. By dawn, the swelling had stopped climbing. Men who had smirked at her satchel no longer smirked when she crossed the yard. Deke did not stop. At breakfast, he leaned in the cookhouse doorway while the room smelled of biscuit steam and bacon fat, and said loudly enough for half the ranch to hear. Funny how quick a widowless ranch starts taking orders from the first woman who catches a snake. Nobody laughed. Ivy, spooning sorghum onto her biscuit, said, maybe the men should have caught more of them before now. A couple of hands bent over their plates to hide smiles. Deke's ears went red. The Baren Mesa was worth money. Good water. Winter grass. Rumors of Owen's debts had been traveling for months. By noon, Mara had the men turning out grain sacks, lifting pallets, and checking every dark corner with poles before any hand went in blind. She found mouse droppings in the feed room in numbers no clean ranch should have had. Worse, she found neatly hidden caches of grain tucked behind barrels and under loose boards, trails of gnaw marks leading toward the bunkhouse and the rear porch. Somebody had been feeding a plague from both ends. She found the first deliberate cache in the stable loft, and Deke was already there. He stood by a split sack as if he had just noticed it himself. Looks like sloppy work. I don't tolerate sloppy work, Mara said. His smile flattened. You think I did this? I think you're standing where no one said you'd been. Careful. Accusing kin can turn a place ugly. A place is already ugly when men use dumb creatures to do their killing for them. He stepped close enough that she smelled bay rum over the hay dust. Then prove it. He brushed her shoulder on the way out. Hard enough to be insult, not accident. She could have gone straight to Owen. She could have named the suspicion and split the ranch before she had proof enough to hold. Instead, she chose the harder road and kept quiet. Wicked men slipped through cracks left by rage. She had seen it before. That evening, she found Ivy near the back porch with a saucer of milk held in both hands. Mara took it gently. What's this for? The cat, Ivy said, then looked guilty because both of them knew the barn cat never came that near the kitchen. Who told you snakes drink milk? Ivy lowered her eyes. Mr. Talver said if I set some by the steps they'd stay close, and you could catch them easier. I only wanted to help. Cold moved through Mara so fast it felt like fire. She crouched to the child's height. Listen to me, honey. You never do what that man tells you where snakes are concerned. Not once. Do you hear? Ivy's eyes shone. Am I in trouble? No. No, sweetheart. You're not in trouble. But someone is using your kindness, and I won't allow it. Owen heard enough to understand. Mara watched his face change as Ivy repeated Deke's words. It was the face of a father learning how close danger had come to his child while he was still thanking God it had missed her. That night, he sat on the porch steps while Mara checked the shadows under them with a lantern and tongs. I should have seen it sooner, he said. Maybe. That's generous. No. Generous would be lying to you about what grief costs. Crickets worked the weeds. Owen looked across the yard where men now tapped boots and shook blankets before touching them. My wife used to notice everything. Since she died, I keep learning danger has been living under my own roof. Mara rested the tongs across her knees. Grief doesn't make a person blind. It just makes every task cost more. He was quiet. Then he asked, How'd you get the scar on your hand? She looked at the white line across her knuckles. My uncle took work at a mining camp. A foreman dared me to handle a Mojave green barehanded after too much whiskey. Silas said no. The foreman called me fit only for kitchen work and bed linen. Owen's jaw hardened. I handled the snake, Mara said. The foreman grabbed my wrist to make me miss. Silas stopped him. There was a fight. Next morning my uncle was dead in the horse lot, and the sheriff called it a drunken fall. Because the foreman owned him. Because some men are easier to bury than to believe. Why come here? Because no one asks a broad woman too many questions if she can keep books and salt beef. Men overlook what they don't desire. Sometimes that's useful. The next day Mara set the trap. She had the men clear the old lambing shed, stack good grain in plain view, leave the side door loose, dust the threshold with flour, hide 2 riders in the cedar brake, and wait with her in the loft. Time in a dark loft stretches like wire. Sweat crawled down Mara's back. Outside, a horse stamped once in the corral. Owen whispered, "If it's Deke, I should have known." Maybe. That's becoming your favorite answer. It keeps folks honest. After a silence, he said, "When Ivy's frightened, she goes looking for you before she looks for me. That bothers you?" No, his voice roughened. It relieves me more than I know how to admit. The truth of that settled between them. In the dimness his hand brushed the back of hers and stayed. Simple warmth, shared by 2 people tired of hard weather. Near sundown the side door eased open. Deke slipped inside, carrying a feed sack on one shoulder and a lantern turned low. A second man followed him. Earl Nunn, stock buyer from Red Bluff. Smooth hat. Too much interest in Owen's cattle and debts these past months. The shape of it turned plain at once. Earl said, "One more week and he'll sell for half value. No one keeps hands on a cursed spread." Deke laughed under his breath. Would have gone quicker if the kitchen woman hadn't turned out to be useful. "Then kill her," Earl said, calm as if asking for coffee. Owen went rigid beside Mara. Deke shook his head. Too obvious now. Better to shake the girl, scare the men, and let grief finish the rest. He's weak where family's concerned. Below them he slit the sack and fed more grain onto the floorboards. "And the snakes?" Earl asked. "Bought in crates from the dry basin near Apache Wells. We seeded mice first, then turned the rattlers loose near the bunkhouse and house." What would you have done, hearing that? Jump too soon, or hold still one more breath so justice had something solid to stand on? Mara stayed still, because she had watched too many wicked men walk out through cracks left by haste. Then a rattling answered from inside the shed itself. Deke froze. "You hear that?" Another answered, closer. Mara knew immediately. Grain. Mice. Day heat trapped in old boards. The trap had drawn more than men. Earl lifted the lantern. In its yellow light, a thick-bodied diamondback began to uncoil beside the nearest sack. Another slid from under the wall plank. A third dropped from the beam shelf where mice had nested. Earl swore and stumbled back into Deke. The lantern sloshed. Kerosene flecked the floor. "Don't move fast," Mara called from the loft. Both men jerked their heads up. Deke recovered first. "You think you've won?" He lunged for his pistol. Owen kicked the loft ladder down. It smashed into Deke's shoulder and sent him crashing into the sacks. The closest rattler struck burlap inches from his hand. Everything after that happened quick. Earl bolted for the door. Mara jumped into the hay below, rolled hard, and snatched up the forked pole she had hidden there. A snake launched from the shadows near Owen's boot. She pinned it so fast the wood cracked against the floor. "Left," she shouted. Deke fired. The shot blasted splinters off the post by Mara's head. Owen hit him shoulder first and drove him into the grain. Rattles filled the shed. One snake slid across Mara's boot. No time for fear. Only knowledge arriving fast. She caught a second snake behind the head and flung it into an empty crate, kicked the lid down, and reached for the wool blanket hanging by the door just as Earl slammed into it trying to escape. The lantern flew from his hand. Flame ran across the spilled kerosene in a fast orange line. Heat punched through the room. Deke got a knee into Owen's ribs and swung the pistol up. Mara threw the blanket over Deke's arm as he fired. The shot went wild. Owen wrenched the gun free and brought the butt down against Deke's temple. Outside, riders came pounding from the cedar brake. Earl made the yard and ran for his horse. Mara chased him with the forked pole. He was halfway to the trough when a huge diamondback rose from beneath it and struck his calf. Earl screamed and went down. Men burst from every side. Horses shrieked. Smoke rolled from the shed roof. Mara planted the pole across Earl's chest to keep him from thrashing into the snake again. Hold still if you want a chance. He stared up at her, terror stripping the greed clean off his face. Help me. You'll get the same chance you gave others, she said. No less. No more. Behind her, Deke stumbled out of the shed with blood on his cheek and a knife in his hand. He did not go for Owen. He went for Ivy. The child stood frozen on the porch steps, both hands pressed to her mouth. That 1 second of stillness was the heart of the whole story. A child in danger. A father too far. A woman everyone had mistaken for furniture until the house began to shake. Mara ran. Deke lunged to seize Ivy as a shield. Mara hit him from the side with all the weight men had mocked in her since girlhood. He went down hard enough to lose the knife. She rolled with him in the dirt, got one forearm across his throat, and held him there while he bucked and cursed beneath her. He gasped, "You big ugly." She drove his face into the yard. "That the best you've got?" Owen reached them then, hauled Deke upright, and threw him against the water trough with a force nobody on the ranch had seen from him since before his wife died. The hands closed in. This time none of them hesitated over whose side they were on. The fire was beaten out before it could take the shed. Earl lived long enough to confess. Not because he found conscience, but because venom and terror loosen what greed keeps tight. He named the traitor, the plan to ruin the ranch, and the debt rumors Deke had fed him. Deke said nothing. He only stared at Mara with a hatred so helpless it had already started turning into fear. By morning he was in irons, bound for jail with Earl beside him and 3 sworn statements in the sheriff's coat. The ranch stood in the hush they left behind. Then Tomas, pale but upright, lifted his hat to Mara. That was all it took. The others followed. Men who had mocked her thanked her. The cook brought coffee before dawn. The stable boy begged to learn. Mrs. Calder pressed a jar of preserves into Mara's hand. A few nights later, after every feed sack had been raised and every porch checked twice, Mara found Owen on the back steps with a lamp between them and the fields breathing heat into the dark. Ivy slept inside. Crickets sang. A coyote called once from the far wash. Owen held out a folded paper. Debt release. Sheriff found enough fraud in Earl's ledgers to break the notes tied to my brother's borrowing. The ranch is clear. Mara sat beside him. Then Baren Mesa is yours outright. It was never the land I feared losing most. The truth in that settled warm and quiet between them. He turned the paper over. I kept trying to be 2 people after Clara died. I kept failing half of it. You kept going. He laughed softly without humor. Some days that feels like a poor achievement. There are whole years when keeping on is the finest thing a person does. He looked at her then, really looked. When Deke went for Ivy, you didn't think twice. No. Why? Mara rested her forearms on her knees. Because somebody once stood by while a strong man decided what my life was worth. I promised myself I never would. He was quiet a long time. Then he said, I don't know when this place began to feel less broken with you in it. Only that it does. Mara swallowed. Strange thing about broken ground. Sometimes it's the only place rain can get down deep enough to matter. His hand covered hers. Warm. Careful. Asking, not taking. If this story is moving you, you are exactly who we tell these stories for. A like and a subscribe let us know to keep bringing you long roads, brave hearts, and endings where goodness is not wasted. Neither of them hurried what came next. It was not rescue or youth. Just 2 tired people sitting shoulder to shoulder while the night insects sang. At last Owen said, I thought I needed someone who could survive this place. Turns out I was waiting on someone who could teach it how to breathe again. Careful, Mara said, eyes on their joined hands. I might start believing you. I was hoping you would. From inside the screen door came Ivy's sleepy little voice. I already do. That broke the tension clean as laughter breaks a storm. Owen laughed for real, rusty from disuse. Mara laughed too until she had to wipe at her eyes. Warmth, then. Not safety all at once, but warmth. The final reckoning came on market day in Red Bluff. Owen might have let the law handle it quietly. Mara would not. Men like Earl and Deke depended on shame staying with the wounded instead of the guilty. Mara wore her plain brown dress and no ribbon. Deke saw her and smiled, still counting on her to shrink from speaking publicly. He had misunderstood her all the way to the end. In front of the magistrate and half the town, Mara laid out the grain trails, the crates, the ridge shots, the confession, and the milk trick told to a child. She spoke clearly. She did not shake. Laughter rippled through the room, mean and delighted. Deke went red to the collar. Then Owen rose. He spoke only once, but the whole room hushed for it. This woman saved my daughter, my ranch, and more than one man under my care. Any person who dishonors her before me dishonors the truth, and I'll answer it as such. That finished what little room remained for slander. Earl lost his contracts, his warehouse, and his good name. Deke was convicted often enough to spend his best years behind stone walls. Justice, when it came, was not pretty. It was better than pretty. It was complete. The Baren Mesa did not merely survive. It prospered. Mara reorganized every feed room, cleared brush, raised grain off the floors, and taught the hands what to watch for in heat season. Tomas healed with a limp and sang anyway. Ivy slept without checking her blankets. Winter came slow and blue. One evening Owen nailed a new sign above the feed house door. It bore Mara's name and title in careful black letters. She stared at it a long while. I can read, you know. I know. You could have just told me. He slipped an arm around her shoulders. Then I'd only have gotten to see your face once. Ivy, wrapped in her mother's old shawl and grinning shamelessly, said, I told him it needed bigger letters. Mara laughed until her eyes stung. By spring there was a second rocking chair on the porch. By summer nobody in 3 counties joked about women and snake fear where Owen Vale could hear it. Widows wrote in asking how to keep barns safe, and Mara answered everyone she could. What had been mocked in her became the very thing that saved a home and gave a grieving man back a future he could bear. When the first monsoon rolled over the ridge, Owen asked Mara to marry him beneath the porch roof while rain turned the yard silver. I love the steadiness of you, he said. If that is enough to build a life on, I'm asking. It is, Mara said. Months later, on an evening washed gold by the last of summer, Ivy ran laughing between the corrals, Tomas tuned a guitar, and Mara stood beside Owen while the pasture grass bent and lifted like the breathing of something finally at peace. Next time, we'll tell the story of the deaf seamstress sent away to a frozen stage stop because her family thought silence made her useless, and the scarred mail rider who learned she could hear truths no one else dared speak.